This is the Action 4. It's the latest iteration of action camera from DJI, and on the exterior, it looks identical to the Action 3. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. However, it's what's on the inside of this camera that makes it so special. Let's get started. What's good, everybody? Ken here. You're watching OriginaldoBo, and I've gotten a chance to spend the past 2 weeks using the DJI Action 4. Now, I would say if you were comparing this to cell phones, this would be like an S series upgrade. It's a very minimalistic upgrade, and honestly, there's really only one thing to talk about, which is the new camera sensor that is packed inside of this action camera. They took the same camera sensor, well, almost the same camera sensor that the DJI Air 3 has, and crammed it inside of here, giving it best-in-class low light performance and just best-in-class image quality overall. This camera packs 10-bit 420 D-Log-M up to 4K 120 frames per second footage. And if you put it side by side next to the Action 3, they are absolutely identical in size and weight. And like I said in the beginning, that's not a bad thing because all of your accessories, batteries, ND filters will transfer over and work with the Action 4, which is pretty fantastic. I think finally we're at a period in DJI action cameras where we're starting to develop some consistency in an ecosystem. We saw this magnetic clip first introduced with the Action 2. It came over to the Action 3, and now it's back again on the Action 4. Now, throughout all of my testing with this camera, I haven't done anything fancy where I try to give you the best, most cinematic footage. I just wanted to use this camera how it's intended, to be haphazard, on the fly, and shot in automatic. And that's exactly what I did. And I'm gonna go ahead and play some test footage right now for you. How's the stabilization? Is it shaking around a lot? Because this little mount is actually moving. So maybe Rocksteady's doing its job well. I will say this, that the camera quality, at least from what I can see on the screen here, looks awesome. Exposing my skin tones properly while also exposing for the outside. That's actually pretty hard to do because the sun is directly overhead right now, so it's not like we have a lot of sun blasting into the cabin. Audio hopefully sounds pretty good. Sometimes when you were filming inside of a car cabin, you get the AC vent noise, and it doesn't sound all that well. So let me know what you think of the audio quality from the car cabin.
This is great to eat.
Oh my God, it's like bath water, dude. Make sure you shuffle.
Shuffle?
Yeah, stingrays.
Oh, yeah.
You don't want to step on one, dude.
Seaweed. This wasn't an interview. Stingray.
You don't want to step on stingrays. You got to shuffle, dude. Yeah, it's in auto.
The engine filter doesn't make much of a difference.
Well, I mean, it's helping the shutter speed. That's what he said. Alright.
Linear plus lock on mine. I've got it in 1080, 30,
So we're
linear
recording.
plus lock.
I do like the screen though, that's brighter. So we're comparing the two.
Oh, I can see mine way better.
Yeah, yours is a little brighter.
It is, isn't it?
But I wonder if I can change the brightness. No, I can change the
On the
brightness.
front screen?
Yeah, I can change the brightness. Most action cameras have never done good in low light. Now, the Action 4 has an auto enhance feature, so when the lighting conditions worsen or deteriorate, it'll enable, it works in 4K 24 and 4K 30 frames per second. You cannot use the auto enhance feature in 60 frames, unfortunately. But what that'll allow you to do is sort of clean up some of that noise and grain. I don't know what sort of voodoo magic it's doing on the back end, but it definitely does help. I was ripping around with the Franken Avata using our Good Idea mount. This is a soft mount. Basically, it just allows you to take out some of those last bits of jitter that can be created from harmonics in the drone. This thing's actually been performing really well. It flies absolutely insane. It's quickly becoming my favorite whoop to fly. But how's the footage look? This is right now 4K 30 frames per second, rock steady, not rock steady plus. And I think the footage looks pretty good. I was watching it back on the screen on the Action 4 and I think it looks good. I'll have to see what it looks like when I get back to the studio. But even though it's pretty decently lit here, it's not enough to really do good things for action cameras. How are the lens flares? Are they manageable? Is it too distracting? I mean, that's something that's unavoidable with the wide angle lens. Let me know what you think.
Alrighty, so all of that footage was shot 4K. Some of it was 30 frames per second, some of it was 60 frames per second, depending on what I was doing or if I intended to slow it down. I wanted to give you a good sampling of what the audio quality was like. I wanted to show you what would happen if the camera was submerged, whether it be in the ocean or in a pool. I also wanted to show you what the 10-bit 420 D-Log-M could do. And what I really love about that new D-Log-M is that it matches up 1-for-1 with the new D-Log-M on the Mavic 3 Pro and on the Air 3, which makes color grading or at least matching your clips a lot easier. I would say that this camera more closely resembles that of mirrorless camera quality. I mean, it's not quite there, so don't flame me, but it does have more of a mirrorless quality than necessarily an action camera. Inside the settings, you can tone back the sharpness to where it's a dull roar, like totally low. You can turn off the noise reduction and do your own noise reduction, or you can have the noise reduction set to high. It has an ISO range of 100 to 12,800, and all the way through most of the ISO ranges, the footage is incredibly usable, and I think that's what I find most interesting about this camera. Now, going further into the specs on this camera, it has a backside illuminated stack sensor. Now, I asked DJI why they didn't put any of this information in their marketing material for the public, and I also asked the same question about the Air 3. And the reality is basically most consumers don't know what any of that means. And when they're buying a camera like an action camera, they just want to know that it works well and it does the job of an action camera. So they didn't put any of that information there, but I have the email receipts from DJI reps confirming that it is the same sensor mostly as the Air 3. And I say mostly because the aperture is slightly different. It's a little bit smaller of an aperture on this because, again, when you're dealing with a action camera, everything has to remain in focus. So it's mostly set to infinity focus. While I don't have the exact specs on the aperture, I will say it's not quite as good in low light. And anytime you start mixing a wide angle lens into shots, you're just not gonna get the best low light performance. It is amazing. It is definitely better than anything else on the market currently today. However, just don't have Air 3 expectations out of this. It comes pretty damn close. You still have to contend with some of those crazy lens flares that you get out of action cameras when they hit direct lights. Like if you're in the city or in a parking lot, you're gonna get those wild lens flares because the lens is just so wide. That's unavoidable and inevitable. Even your iPhone or any other phone that has a wide angle lens will do that if you face it directly into the light. Now I did go ahead and put this on a drone and did some comparison shots between the Action 3, the Action 4, and the Hero 11 Black. And I basically wanted to fly them in the worst time of day, which I would say down here is about 10:30 to 11 in the morning. It's the harshest lighting, and it should be a perfect stress test for this camera. I went ahead and flew it in a very familiar spot, so you can go back and look at all of my footage that I've shot at this golf course with other cameras, so you can have a good baseline comparison. I'm gonna roll that footage for you right now. Alrighty, so all of those clips were filmed in Rocksteady, Rocksteady Plus. I didn't use Horizon Steady, I didn't use GyroFlow. I feel like Rocksteady does a much better job than Hyper Smooth on the GoPro. If you notice, the GoPro is getting some crazy weird vibrations, which I really couldn't even explain. But I've been seeing this ever since I got the Hero 11 Black and the Hero 11 Mini. Hyper Smooth is not nearly as good as I felt it was in the past. So for me, I switched over to the Osmo Action 3 late last year after battling issue after issue with my Hero 11 Minis and my Hero 11 Black. I ended up just jumping ship and buying two Action 3s, which have been perfectly fine. The image quality has been great. I wouldn't say it's better than the Hero 11 Black, but honestly, nobody's pixel peeping when you're just flying freestyle. But now with the Action 4, I can get great image quality, awesome stabilization, and for the first time ever, I almost feel like you don't even need to use GyroFlow if you didn't want to. But if you do want to use GyroFlow, you still can use GyroFlow if you put this in the 4x3 mode with the wide angle sensor. So it's got to be 4x3 wide image stabilization turned off, and that will work in frame rates from 24 to 60 frames per second. If you want to go into a higher frame rate like 100 and 120 frames per second, it will need to be in the 16:9 mode, again with image stabilization turned off. But ultimately, I feel like this is a solid little upgrade. If you already bought the Action 3 and you aren't in the market for an action camera, you probably don't need a new camera. But sometimes having the best image quality on the fly and having nice, smooth, creamy skin tones, for me, is the most important aspect of a good camera. And I think that this finally checks all the boxes. I can use this as a vlogging camera if I wanted to, or I can use it just as an everyday throw around camera when I don't feel like breaking out the big boys. But anyways, I'll leave some links down in the description below if you want to check this out. And I'll also include some raw footage I've shot with this camera, including some gyro flow footage if you want to go ahead and cut it up and see how it stabilizes and see how the D-Log-M grades. All right, guys, that's going to do it for this video. I hope you enjoyed. As always, stay original.
I heard they checking for me, no one checking on me, so I had to go run up a check. I got the mess.
Yeah, this is a wide. I'm in wide.
Okay, so we can switch to GoPro.
Oh shit. Oh, that's salty. Sean, what are you Sean? What are you? I don't know. I was swimming. Somebody was on top of me. Yeah, that was me. Dude. What the hell?
Just told me, ain't no flexing on me, my attorney gon' call and collect. Blessings on blessings for me, my successes only made them envious, they got upset. I had to put all their egos in check. I want the money, the power, respect, and I heard you know so-and-so, you not a threat, cause I really know so-and-so, they like my family, so they go pretend